What's up, guys? So we got a question, or we actually got two questions today on YouTube from Timothy Jr. His first question is regarding a interview that Joe Rogan did with Ben Askren. It's a really good interview. I'll put the link down below to the short clip where Ben Askren talked about this. But basically, in the podcast that Joe did with him, there was a part where Ben Askren was talking about the efficacy of jiu-jitsu, most jiu-jitsu gyms training, right? The way that they do it, which is typically, they show a technique, they do it a couple times, they move on, they do it a couple times, they move on, and then at the end of class, instead of doing any work on that area of focus, they simply just say, all right, guys, cool, let me set the timer, boom, go do some full rolling, right? He made some good points, which we'll talk about in a second. And then in the second question that Timothy had, he was talking about the belt system, and the belt system, is it necessary to have belts in jiu-jitsu? So, Timothy, thanks for the question, brother. And there's a lot to get into as far as what Ben Askren said, but basically, the big idea that we'll talk about in that interview is about the efficacy, the effectiveness of jiu-jitsu training if it's in that situation where you're doing a technique a couple times and then you move on to the next technique, and then at the end of class you just do some rolling. So what he's talking about, he's touching on the idea of deliberate practice, which we can do an analogy here, draw a parallel, right? Let's say that you were a musician and you were playing a song and you had this particular song that you were trying to play. You could play the song all the way through except for this one little complicated part where your hands, you were just having trouble because it was very complex and you're having trouble getting your hands to move the right way, or adjusting them the right way, whatever it might be. So if you were going to practice so that you could play the song really well, would you simply just start playing music and just seeing what happens and strumming chords? Or would you say, okay, listen, I really want to play this song, so I'm going to start by focusing on the part that I have the most trouble with. I'm going to get this part ironed out, and then I'm going to practice this whole song through, right? You'd probably, common sense would say that if you want to be the best at playing the song, then you're going to focus on the part that you're having trouble with, get that ironed out, and then play the whole damn thing together. So this way you can have this complete song that you were wanting to play. And this is true. A lot of jiu-jitsu guys, deep down, they know that if they want to get better at jiu-jitsu, they need to play in places they're uncomfortable. They need to work on specific skills and techniques that they don't use all the time, maybe they don't feel comfortable with. And he talked about this. Most of the time when they go to do a full roll, what are they going to do? They're going to simply go back to whatever it is they're used to, right? And so it's up to coaches, most often, to force people to adjust their games, right? And like he was in the video, he talked about, making a kid play from if he wants to wrestle and be good, you have to have a front headlock, right? So he's making this person do this front headlock over and over and over again. And then when it comes time to wrestle, he's making them doing it live. And that's very important. You have to have this situational rolling. I talk about this all the time in my videos, in my little free ebook that I give away. I talk about the idea of closing the gap from where you just learned something in a very slow manner to being able to use it in live situation. There's a big gap there, and you've got to close it with various forms of drilling and situational rolling, which I typically call active drilling because it's very focused and you're trying to use this a lot of times in a situation. Anyway, getting off topic. So it's a good idea. Now, here's the separation that I would make is that a lot of times if you're wrestling, right? I'm sure that some people wrestle because they just enjoy it, right? But a lot of times, anytime I've talked to a wrestler, anytime I've heard a wrestling coach talk, it's never simply to train because you want to train. It's because you're focused on getting some medals, you're focused on a competition that's coming up, a state championships, the Olympics, the NCAA championship, whatever it might be. You're focused on competing in a competition, you're focused on doing that thing, right? Whereas in jiu-jitsu, as a coach, I can tell you from experience of over 10 years, we get a lot of people that don't necessarily want to compete. They're guys that have they're competing in life and all their careers and stuff like that. They look at jiu-jitsu as kind of a release valve, right? They want to just kind of relax and come in and have fun, get exercise and enjoy the people that they're around. And they don't want to always be getting ready for something. They don't want to train as hard as possible because that's not what they're into, right? Now we have those people too, but it's a combination. You get this whole big hodgepodge group of people. And the thing about deliberate practices is while it's really effective, it's not very fun, especially if you're working on an area that you're not too thrilled about being in, right? So if you're a wrestler and all of a sudden your coach puts you on your back for the first time, as I can tell you from experience, it's not fun playing from guard. It's effective, it's useful, you have to learn how to do it, but for a long time it will be frustrating. And so it's one of those things where I like to do, this is now getting into what I think about it, I like to give it to my students in doses. So during a typical class, we'll practice a couple of techniques, not too many, but we'll practice a couple techniques, and we typically stay on a theme for multiple weeks. So for instance, if we're focused on, like right now, is a butterfly guard with a cross collar. we're on this position for 2 weeks. And so at the beginning of it, we start slow, and then we begin to speed those drills up. And then by the next week, we start to add in more skills and attributes that I want them to get from it. Like one particular drill where we sort of progress with, which is the collar drag, basic collar drag to the back. Well, we started that off very slow, and then we sped it up. To where basically you do the collar drag, boom, as you come up to the back, the person scrambles away from you, regains guard, and then they open their guard, enter in the position, sit up to the position, boom, they collar drag, and then we just cyclically move back and forth into it. And so it's a good drill. You're getting fast-paced drilling, which will be helpful when you're basically adding a little bit more stress to the movement. Both people are involved in the motion, so it's not boring. And again, it's a way to get a lot of reps in a relatively short amount of time because there is no pause. And so that's one way that we'll do it. Now, when it comes time to roll, I will start them in the position with the grips and say, hey, listen, if you go out of this realm of positions, we're going to restart. And if any of these things happen, restart. And so it's very situational because we're focused on just that one focus of using that particular position. Now, here's where I like to divert off of it. I tend to always include some full rolling into class. And this is because when people come in, I want them to get their meat and potatoes, right? I want them to get that deliberate practice. That's what I think about it. It's the best part of training as far as getting better. But I do want them to also have a little bit of dessert, right? So when they come to class, I want them to be able to get on the mats and, do the deliberate practice. And then after it's done, we'll kind of get a break, come back. And then afterwards, all right, guys, let's do some full rolls. And that can vary in time and the way that we roll, depending on what's coming up. But again, we're just having fun. And this way you have people that can get better, but at the same time can just cut back a little bit and have some fun and enjoy themselves. And so again, I think that what he said is absolutely spot on. It's a great interview too. You should listen to it. Spot on as far as being effective. But I think sometimes if you have people that aren't hardcore competitors, doing the full rolling can be fun. But I think that situational rolling should be included in classes on a regular basis because it's incredibly important. And for some reason, just sharing this, if you guys are in a situation where your coach does no situational rolling, take it upon yourself. Think about what you need to work on during those full rolls and limit yourself to those positions. It'll make you so much better. Now, the second part of second question that Timothy had, I know this video will be a little bit of a long one, but we'll have some fun with it. The second one that he has says, he was thinking about it the other day, when it comes to motivation to the belt system, it provides a extrinsic form of motivation opposed to intrinsic sort of motivation. He's like, do you feel like the belt system is necessary? So, very simple question. Is it necessary? Short answer is no, it's not necessary, right? Necessity means that you have to have it. You don't have to have it to grapple. And as far as the motivation goes, I really think that most people should get almost zero motivation from belts. To me, belt chasing is silly. You should be chasing techniques. You should be chasing skill, your own abilities, because it's you that's going to make the belt possible. It's not the belt. You shouldn't be chasing the object, right? We do this a lot of times, right? We chase medals, we chase belts, we chase all these external things that we want, but then you eventually realize that you're the thing, the vehicle that's making all this happen. And so day to day, you should always be worried about, are you getting better? Are you focusing on pushing yourself a little bit? Are you focused on maybe making your techniques better? Just like going back to the first question, are you focusing on like some of the things that you could be doing to make yourself better? Whatever it might be, but I think that's where the focus should be. Now, is it necessary? It's not necessary, but it is helpful. It's helpful as a coach so I can categorize people to some degree of their level of training, experience, knowledge, and time in. And then it's also helpful for competitions. It's not perfect by no means, but at least it gives you some sort of loose framework to work with when you send people to competitions. Because again, if we went on, say, like years, like say we get rid of the belts and we just go by years when you go to a competition and everybody wears like the same color belt. Well then, a person who's been training 5 years, like say you have two people, one person training for 5 years might be completely different from another person training for 5 years. One person might be almost black belt level while the other person's struggling to hang with the blue belt. So it's helpful as a coach. It really is helpful, and it's helpful for competitions, and it's what we're working with. So it's fine for the most part. Again, it's just an arbitrary system that we use. We could use some other system, but it's what we use in jiu-jitsu, so, I'll work within that, and that seems to be okay. But as far as it being necessary, it's definitely not necessary. And for all you guys watching, it should not be a form of motivation for you. Don't chase the belts. They're there, and they will be a byproduct of you becoming better and better and better and sticking with it, but it should not be the thing, because again, I'll tell you right now, you're going to get the belts, and if you really focus on that belt and that belt becomes the prize that you're after, you're going to get that belt, and then you're going to go, right? You're going to get it and realize that it wasn't really that important in the first place. It was about you chasing something, and now you need something else to chase, right? So don't put too much stock in that belt. Anyway, so guys, this is long enough, I think, but I appreciate the question, Timothy. And as far as the third question you listed, I will do that one in another video. So guys, hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.